All right, gang. So just a few weeks ago, I'm sitting in Glenn Lundy's office in Kentucky, observing a debate about, is it people, or is it the marketing, or is it the Carvanas of the world? Like, who's causing us all this grief? I mean, you got individuals like Ali Rita, who is selling a gazillion, don't fact check the number, but he's selling a crap ton of vehicles, all on relationship, not really active on social. And then you've got the other side of the debate, which is like, but our marketing sucks. And what about our website? And are we saying the right thing on social, or what do we post? None other person better to join me than the CEO of PCG Digital, a good pal, a DPB alum, Glenn Pasch. Thanks so much for joining me on the Dealer Playbook podcast.
My absolute pleasure. I cannot wait to spend some time chatting with you. One of my favorite people in the world. That's you. Glad to be here.
Now I'm blushing. For those that are listening only, I'm blushing.
Yes.
Well, you know, I always enjoy chatting with you because you and I tend to follow a similar vein or thought process. However, you always, at least in my estimation, have a much more well thought out thought process than mine, but we at least kind of move in the same direction, which is, why does any of this matter if we don't have a foundation in place? Like, who cares what Carvana is doing if you have no desire to change anything internally for your own store? Or who cares if your competitor has better marketing but doesn't have a process to match? So I want to get into this with you. What should we be thinking about? And I mean, by the way, I know you're speaking at Digital Dealer, and that's coming up. Right. Does this tie into what you're going to be talking about at Digital Dealer?
Yeah, a little bit. I think that what I'm speaking about at Digital Dealer is this idea of, over the past 2.5 years now, we had to make a lot of changes in the automotive industry of how we interacted with our customers. A lot of it did depend on where you were located in the United States. I'm in New Jersey, and we were totally on lockdown. So you could not go into a dealership. Now, parts of California, Florida, parts of Georgia, it didn't matter. You could still go into the dealership and somewhat transact in the same manner that you had previously.
Right.
But there were changes that you had to make. Some of them you were forced to make, whether you liked it or not, but actually it was better for the customer. And now you're thinking on the other side of this, as we are back to a whatever sense of normalcy you want to say, have we gone backwards? Did we forget all of those good things that happened for the customer? The transaction sped up. You were willing to do more over the phone, over email, if you had a digital retailing tool or piece of technology, you had to, and it worked, and you made money, sometimes more money. And now all of a sudden, are you thinking, well, that's great, now that's a foundation I can move forward on? Or is it, oh, thank God it's over, I'm going back to what I used to do? So, and to your point, I think we tend to throw stones at other people, be it the Carvanas or the dealer down the street or whatever it is. Ultimately, you pose the absolute best question is, are you going to change? Does that really matter? Are you willing to learn from Carvana? Forget what you think of them. What are they doing? And do you want to apply some of that to your business? And if you do, okay. If you don't, then why is it even taking up any space in your mind if you're not going to look at it, inspect it, and or potentially change something?
You said it a couple of times, and it makes me think. You said kind of this return to normal. And I was thinking about this the other day. What even is normal anymore? Like, do I want to return to it, or have we passed this threshold whereby things like the new normal is now? And what I mean by that is, dealers are going to have less inventory. Maybe this was the catalyst for smaller floor plans, or more of an emphasis on service departments, or whatever it might be. Am I latching on too much to the idea of what I like? Did we all just become our parents over COVID? The way it used to be, Glenn. That's what I want. None of these young Gen Z or whatever. Do I want to return to that, or should I be embracing the new norm?
Well, I think it's a great conversation piece if someone really wants to sit down for a moment and think about it, because every generation or the previous generation has that moment of things have changed and back in my day and all
Right.
of that. But the reality is we have moved forward. We're always moving forward. So this, right, this last 2 years, we had change. You could go back to when stock market crashed in 2000 or previously or 2008 or whatever it was. You could say, oh my God, that changed. Interest rates were up and we had to deal with that at one time. Every era, you can look at any time frame and say that was great, that was bad, we changed. The question really is, what's happening in front of us? Meaning, your point. Maybe this is when the manufacturer says we don't need ground stock of 60, 90, 120 days. 30 is good enough, because then maybe I don't have to incentivize stair-step programs to move metal, and dealers are saying, well, I have to lose money on the front end, but if I just sell my cars, I get money from the manufacturer, so I win-win. All of a sudden everyone says, maybe we don't have to do that anymore, or let's look at less staffing. Do we need all of the people? Do we need more people in our dealership, where we actually understaffed and selling in spite of ourselves? So everything is in evolution. We're constantly moving forward. The question really is, are you willing to look at everything through the lens of what you want your business to be? We have a tendency to make changes or think we should make changes based on external influences. The dealer down the street's doing X, I should do X. Bob at my 20 group does X, I need to do this. Instead of really saying, what do I want my customers to feel when they're done, and work backwards. That's what I think. If you work backwards, then you always have that anchor that all decisions can go through.
Yeah. Interesting to that point. It makes me think about the challenge we have in this industry, the shiny object syndrome, or the buzzword, whatever, and how we are still putting a lot of faith, hoping that something else will solve problems for us. But to your point, what do I want the customer to feel, and work backwards from there? And that's what Uber did. That's what Airbnb did. That's what Tesla has done.
It's probably what Carvana did.
It's what Carvana did.
Yeah, and they marketed to all those pain points and frustrations that people had and said, yes, I don't like that. And they offered something different, or the perception of something different, because is every Carvana customer or Vroom customer happy? No, they're struggling. But their whole premise was going out to market to say, we're different. We want you to feel this way. So what do we have to do? And so when you work backwards and you say, here's how I want them to feel. Okay, this is what we have to do. My employees have to do this to make them feel that way. And then we build a process so we can repeat it and do it all the time. And then we go find the people that fit the process to deliver. And then we get the tech to help the customer and help my team, right? Then all those decisions are, should I do? So Bob has a great idea. He uses X product, and you say, well, that sounds great. And then you come back and you say, well, wait a minute. What do I really need to change something? If I do, is it an addition? Is it a replacement? What is it? Right. But you have this well thought out plan that you can constantly look at. And then I think it's easier to be adaptable to these changes because you have this anchor. Now, again, you're not maybe saying la, 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 fingers in your ears, this is the only way it is, but at least you have something to compare it to when having a discussion about change.
Yeah. And it makes me think about, let's use Uber. I mean, I don't want everyone to hate the podcast that we've said Carvana 10 times in the last 5 minutes, right? But look, if you did that, you listening, if you had done what they did, guess what? You'd be hated right now by the others. You're like, the bullseye would be on your back. Sure. But it makes me think about, well, what did they all do then? Because you're talking about this internal process, which we need to get to. But the first thing that comes to my mind is, if you look at Uber or Airbnb, they didn't create something new. They repackaged many existing assets into a modern, much more scalable process. They didn't invent the internet. They didn't invent smartphones. They didn't invent payment processing. They didn't invent ride sharing, taxis, on and on and on, maps. They assembled all of those already existing assets into something that made much more sense to the audience that they were paying attention to. And that's available to everybody. And it comes down to process. We would hate Uber right now in it probably a similar way that Carvana has taken a lot of heat if their process sucked. Carvana figured out the top level.
And that's the key, right. And it's a perfect analogy, because what they did was, whatever the instigation or where that idea started or formulated, but it was a frustration point for someone. Right. Someone was frustrated and said, why can't this be better? Why can't this be easier? Why is this always a struggle? And I don't like it, but I have to. There has to be a better way.
Right.
That's the conversation that started. And then to your point is, they went out and said, okay, what do I need to solve this? Or what does solving it look in my mind? Or what's my wish list of things? Well, what if I could just type in my phone and somebody showed up and I didn't have to wait? Great. Then you say, well, great. Well, we have phones. I don't need to invent a phone. What else? What tools, like the Avengers? What do we have to assemble to have this powerful team?
Somebody's got teenage kids.
Oh, yes.
But you're right. Yeah, it makes absolute sense. And so that all has to be met with process, to your point. I mean, none of this makes sense if you can't sustain it.
It has to be repeatable. And that's the point, is that I've shared this story before. I was in the restaurant industry for a long time, and I worked, this was way back in the 80s, before smartphones and social media. So you relied on word of mouth, and you relied on a review from the New York Times in New York City to validate this was a great place to go.
Right.
But the owner would say, it doesn't matter if we can't deliver it every day, because there are so many places to get a great steak or great seafood. So he said, we have to deliver that experience that surrounds the food. Yes, the food has to be good, but he said it's what's around it, and we have to work hard that every time someone comes here, we give them that same experience, or it's constantly getting better. But it's repeatable, so that if they come back a second time, a third time, a fourth time, or recommend someone to come in, the person goes, you were right, that was a great experience, versus, are you kidding me? That was horrible. Don't ever recommend restaurants. So that idea of how do we do that for our dealership? How can we create this experience around the vehicle? Because the vehicle is the vehicle, but around it, how can we take from other industries things that made us happy when we got our reservation from a hotel, or we bought something, or we went somewhere and it was a great experience? How do we go, well, what did they do? And can I do it here to help my customers feel that same way about interacting with my dealership?
It makes me think of the experience I had purchasing our Hyundai Palisade. Mm-hmm. Love the vehicle. They've thought of everything for families, without us having to suffer the shame of driving what I call the Bradley assault vehicle, AKA minivan, right? They thought of everything. Smooth vehicle, entertainment throughout. Just the process of purchasing that vehicle sucked so bad.
Mm-hmm.
So bad. Nothing is more repeatable than not having a process to begin with. Nothing stands out more than delivering on an exceptional process. Mm-hmm. And moving into this day and age, I'd love your thoughts, but we can't afford to have a bad process. We can't afford to have a scalable, piss poor process.
Well, I'll push back a little bit, because there potentially can be some misguided thought around this. I agree with you, but there will be some people who are focused on very short term. I sold the car. That's it. They're not coming back for 3 or 4 or 5 years. The danger is, you don't know at any given time if this person has a following of thousands and thousands of people, or is very influential in your market. that one bad review could potentially influence. But why would you only want to sell one car versus retaining that person long term, so they don't think of anyone else to service their car, buy a vehicle from? That, in a person's mind, you become their dentist, their doctor. You don't change your dentist every 3 years unless
Right.
of course there's a major, you just go to your dentist unless, right? So I can understand sometimes why the bad process is, or they rely so much on personality of the salesperson, or that individual does a great job, versus I can put most people into this process and I train them and they can deliver a great experience. Yes, those people who are just exceptional, they just have a knack, well, they'll be excellent. But I want the bulk of my people to deliver a great experience to my people. And that takes work. And that is something that should be repeatable, because even if it's not, let's take a look at it a little differently. Forget the customer for a moment. Forget the customer. Who wants to be frustrated as a worker, as an employee coming in every day, and I don't know what's right or what's wrong? Or it changes if Michael's running the dealership today as the general manager, or Glenn's doing it today because Glenn does it differently than, or on the flip side, if I'm a manager and I have 12 salespeople and everybody does it differently, how the hell am I going to keep track of 12 different processes? How can I get them better at their performance? That to me is a very frustrating work environment. So again, we tend to think about it always for the customer, but we should also be thinking about it for our employees, to create an environment where they understand every day what my job is. You don't have to figure it out. They just come in, play the game. There's going to be somebody watching me, helping me succeed, but I know what I'm doing. Nobody's going to work in a place where every day it's like spin the wheel and let's see what changes.
You made me think of some data that Google shared about how today's car shoppers, specific to, I want to say Gen Z in particular, maybe some gray area with Millenial. But if you look at these two segments that have a higher likelihood of lifetime value than some of the aging segments, they were pointing out how these shoppers are less likely to be loyal to a particular brand and more loyal to an experience.
Absolutely. I think we all are.
Right.
I think we all are, even the aging segment. If you think about it, you go to a certain restaurant over and over and over again. If I came to, you came here, I'm going to take you to a restaurant that the experience is great and it's dependable. And I think we like that. Yes, there's some people that, are loyal to a brand, but I don't think that really changes. I think there's always a small group of people that are loyal to the brand until you disappoint them. I think we love to segment people and say they're this or they're more than that. That's like saying, oh, millennials are lazy or Gen Z is lazy. And you know what? I bet you there's tons of Gen Z people who get offended at that because they're hardworking and they don't want to be, seen as lazy. So I think everybody wants a good experience. I don't think anybody is loyal to a brand and saying, yeah, I'm going to keep that brand and have a horrible experience every single time because I'm loyal to the brand. I think I don't know. I'm older. I go for experience. So,
well, you look good.
Oh, thank you.
But, it's funny actually though, because I think about my grandparents, Italian immigrants, could barely speak English. And by barely speak English, if I heard my name, I would look at them and smile, kind of a thing, right? But they shopped religiously at Sears, and that could be perceived as loyalty to the brand or the company, but I think it really just had to do with the experience. They knew other Italians that worked there that could speak to them in their native language. And so to your point, you're right. I think, isn't that an interesting caution that we should have when looking at data to understand what the actual driver of the loyalty is, versus a blanket statement like what I just almost led everyone astray by saying that we're less likely to.
No, I don't think it's leading astray. But
I know. You know me, though. I'm tongue in cheek, but
But think about it. Sears back in the day, we shopped at Sears because it was dependable, good, solid products for a reasonable price.
Mm-hmm.
But again, it didn't matter if you went in there and salespeople were rude, you'd go find somewhere else. Why? There were other options to go to, but it was always seen. And then what happened with Sears is the quality went down. The staffing and service went down, and people said, okay, I'm out. I don't care. And you've probably heard people say, well, I shopped at Sears for years and they've gone downhill. So I'm no longer going because of that. So I think all of that, and going back to that idea of process, if you're seen as a dealership that creates a good buying experience, not shopping experience, right? Because shopping's fun, test driving, clicking the buttons, looking at the car. But once I go, that's what I want. If there are ways that you can get me out of there faster and easier with less friction, less time in between for whatever. And again, there's always extremes. Someone who's listening is going to say, well, what about the person with the bad credit or doesn't? Not talking about that. I focus on the middle 60 all the time. Build your process for the middle 60. You're going to have 10 people that are, speed out because they have great credit, everything, they bring everything and and they're out. And then you have the other bottom 20% where it's a struggle. First time, they didn't know, they forgot something. But I want the middle 60 people, 60% of people. Can we speed up that process? Where's that friction? And now there's technology to do that. There's strategies to do that. And that's the experience. So if people are sharing that was easy. That was easy. I liked it. They took care of me. They listened to me, right? Just like the food was great. The service was great. All of that you talk about in a restaurant. Why can't we have that? So that way other people come in and say, well, great. If this was easy, because you're comparing it to maybe a frustrating experience the last time where someone goes, got to go through this again. And someone says, no, go to Michael's store. He's great. Ask for Michael. He'll take care of you. And you're going, with that hope of experience, because the car, either you're buying the same car because you like that brand, or you read about that car, or you did some research about the car. Now it's like, okay, I got to go deal with people. Why can't we have people excited about going to the dealership with the same enthusiasm as I can't wait to go to this restaurant and have dinner because I know the experience around the food is going to be great. I'm going to have a great time. We just don't.
Yeah. And there's nothing worse. It's like Murphy's Law. There's nothing worse than referring somebody to a restaurant and then them having a crappy experience at that restaurant because it makes you feel like an idiot. And then you're less likely to make any referrals about anything ever again because you're like, oh man, every time I do, they always
let you down.
Out. The food was greasy,
so many,
whatever.
And again, you have to understand sometimes, again, people will perceive these conversations of, they don't understand, dealers are, the majority of dealers do a great job and their focus is doing a great job and they want to take care of the customers. It's a business. One of my clients said it the best, running a dealership, general manager, high level, it's a business of distractions. There's always something going on, something that you have to attend to. But the best operators are the ones that have the processes in place where it isn't optional. It isn't optional based on Michael's here today, Glenn's here tomorrow, and things change. Personality can change, but the process shouldn't change because that builds consistency of comfort for the employees who then can deliver that comfort to the customer, right? So that's really the job of when you're dealing with this is how do we just refine our processes, constantly looking at that, as we said, people and then processes and yes, your product, but it's the performance piece of looking back and inspecting and saying, are we delivering on what we thought? How can we tweak it? How can we refine it? How can we keep getting better at it over and over and over again? And that just takes work. And that's what makes the great dealerships. That's what makes consistency in terms of experience. And I think all dealers want it. It's just not easy and it takes work and it's not pretty. It's not sexy and it's not going to happen in a day. It takes time. It could take years for you to really get it all set and then it runs. But people don't want to hear that sometimes because they're looking for either a quick way or quick fix or whatever it is. Listen, you've had your business for how long?
This is my 20th year.
So with Flex Dealer, how long is it? 20?
Since '06.
Okay. So think about it. You and I talked about this not too long ago.
Mm-hmm.
You finally feel like it's running over the last few years. You got it to a point where it's running consistently the way you want, and it feels like you can, you're coaching and the people are there and they know what they're doing, because it took all. So think about that. Years of frustration, trying, testing, falling, whatever. Now you feel
screaming into a pillow.
Exactly. We've all had those, it's feeling as if, okay, now I can really start stepping on the gas and running. Right. That takes time and it takes work. And again, there's so much pressure in dealerships with 30-day sales cycles and volume and all of the rest. And again, I do not want anyone to sit here and think, oh, it's easy. Glenn's saying that. I know. I talk to dealers. It is not. Running a business, I run mine too. It's not easy, but you have to you have to think that the process is your structure. The process gives people confidence to be able to run, because I know what I'm doing. I know what to expect. There's nothing this customer could ask me that I don't have an answer to. I know what to do. I can get this done. I know who to go to. That allows you to be comfortable and grounded versus stressed. Because again, no one wants to work in a stressful environment, not stress from busy or competitive. I'm talking about stress of every day I don't know what the hell I'm doing and no one's here to help me, and I'm just hope I'm not going to get yelled at.
Right.
Not a good place.
Which is real. I've known people in that situation, and they're a basket case. It makes me think of if the objective is long-term business, be in business a long time, you're going to exist anyways. So really what it comes down to is your level of willingness and belief that doing what you're talking about, Glenn, is in fact the right thing to do. Do I believe that this is the right thing to do? If yes, I'm going to be in business anyways, and I'm planning on being in business anyways. I might as well start working on this or iterating upon it. If I don't believe it's the right thing to do, and I just want to keep trying to buy my way out of operational inefficiency, like our pal Dan Moore talks about, then salute, mazel tov. That's your deal, but it's going to be a painful road. But I guess what I'm trying to say is, if you're planning on being in business and existing anyway, you might as well do what you believe in and what is the right thing to do. That's really the bottom line for me.
Yeah, I think that, and it can be sometimes hard because depending on where you came from in your journey, meaning I may have worked for somebody that was chaotic, and that's what I think is right. Right. So that's my model of what I worked with. You could say that, you could have family, right? If parents bicker and argue and whatever it is, someone growing up will say, well, that's what a married couple always should do, right? So it is what your frame of reference is. But there are more and more successful dealers that you could at least ask the question of saying, is there a better way? And I think going back to what we talked about earlier, if we're always moving forward, are you a perennial student? Are you constantly asking the questions, even just to confirm that what you're doing is correct for you? That's as valuable as trying to think, well, do I have to go out and find something new? No, just keep asking questions of, how can I refine this? Could we get better at this? Could we make this smoother? Could we trim here? What is my retention for? What motivates my employees?
Right.
5 years ago may not today. Or, Michael, you've worked for me for 7 years. Well, what motivated you when you came here may not motivate you now because you're married and have kids and you need something different than, I just want to make money. So all of it. But I think ultimately the best performers in any industry are always asking questions and looking, and just always looking at what they're doing through the eye of, can we get better at it? Can we make it easier, faster, smoother for everyone involved?
Man, very thought-provoking stuff, which is always the case when you chat with someone like Glenn Pasch. Man, how can those listening get in touch with you?
You can find me in a couple places, usually Twitter, LinkedIn, or where I hang out the most, and it's just Glenn Pasch, my name. PCGdigital.com is our website. GlennPasch.com is also my website, or you can also listen to my podcast, the You're in Charge Now What podcast. You can find me there as well.
Specifically episode, 1 and 50?
I think you were one. You were definitely one. Well, no, I think you were the first guest. I think I did my opening one by myself and said, I think I need people. So yes, you were definitely the first, and then you came on again, and we have to have you on in the future as well.
Well, tell me, just before we close, tell me a little bit about DMSC. When is it? How do we get involved, and how can those listening take advantage?
Thank you. Yeah, the Digital Marketing Strategies Conference is in May. This is May right now, May 22nd through the 24th. Some tickets still are available, so please make sure you come. It's a phenomenal experience because it's not a conference per se in the fact that I would say like it's a trade show or whatever else. It's more the fact that it is a 3-day conversation where it's very intimate, very small. And what we end up doing is we will talk to people. I have no idea what's beeping here.
I'm going to say, is Domino's calling you back to verify your lunch order?
Funny. I have no idea why this is even talking or whatever. But anyway, we'll throw my phone in the garbage in a minute. So anyway, it's a 3-day conversation. So you have access to the speakers, because we've all been at conferences where the speaker's up there. We may be able to grab them for 1 minute afterwards and say, thank you, this was great. You can see them over the course of 3 days, having dinner, right, sitting in other workshops, having conversations. So it's much more thoughtful, much more networking, and the vendors who are there, they're the owners or the creators of the product. So that's great, as well as the dealers. And we're always trying to tackle themes that other people may or may not be talking about. So it's a lot of fun. It's a great location, Napa Valley, California. Can't go wrong there. So thank you for asking. So again, digitalmarketingstrategies.org to go get a ticket. Please make sure you come. And Michael's going to be here. He's going to be there too. So
I am. Hey, at time of recording, month of May, I will be at this upcoming one. But if they go to, I mean, this is something you do every year, right?
Yes, every year usually in May. And then in the fall, we do another conference. It is now called the Modern Retailing Conference. It used to be called the Automotive Analytics and Attribution Summit, but we thought that was too wordy. So now I know people used to call it the AS Conference. So we said, I think we have to change the name. So no, Modern Retailing Conference is going to cover a lot more aspects of the dealership experience beyond just marketing. So HR, sales process, to creative, to definitely marketing, but also these other areas, fixed ops, that a lot of times don't get the attention they need at these types of events.
Fantastic. So for those of you listening in the year 2033, don't fret. You can go to both of those websites. You will see you
probably just click the chip in the back of your head and something that'll just pop up visually in front of you, because we'll all be in the metaverse by then.
Yes. Yeah. We're in the metaverse right now. Like, we're just not avatars of ourselves, but that's a different topic.
That's a different show for a different day, folks.
That's different. Thanks so much for joining me on the Dealer Playbook.
All right. Take care.